I called Lauren with the same kind of nerves I used to get before job interviews, that mix of hope and dread that sits right in your throat. My only daughter. My only child, or so I thought. I told myself she'd answer with a smile in her voice, filling the silence of the past few weeks with something warm, maybe wedding plans or happy news. But when she finally picked up, her voice was cool, almost distracted. I asked, as gently as I could, "So, when's the wedding?" There was a pause, one that seemed to stretch forever. Then she said it, sharp and smug, "We got married yesterday. It was just for special people." I froze. The phone felt heavy in my hand, like it had turned to stone. 3 years, that's how long I'd been covering their rent. Filling their fridge. Buying their furniture. Even sending money every time there was a so-called emergency. I told myself it was love. That this was what good mothers do. I believed that sacrifice was just the cost of staying close to her. But those 2 words, special people, sliced through me like glass. My eyes drifted to the lavender dress hanging on my closet door, the one I'd bought months ago. I could still see myself in it, standing beside my daughter, smiling for photos that would live on for years. Now, it just looked like a costume from a play I'd never been invited to join. Memories started flooding in, uninvited and cruel. Lauren as a little girl, running into my arms after a thunderstorm. Whispering, "You're my favorite person, Mom." Funny how something that once warmed your heart can suddenly curdle, like milk left out in the sun. Then the phone rang again. It was my sister, Patricia, calling from Wisconsin. "So? How was the big day?" she chirped, all cheer and sparkle. My throat tightened. I couldn't bring myself to say it, that I hadn't even been there. So I lied, my voice trembling as I mumbled something about a small, private ceremony. Just them. The words tasted bitter. I hung up, swallowed my shame, and sat in silence. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, grief twisting itself together with humiliation until I couldn't tell one from the other. Over and over, I heard Lauren's voice, "Special people." Each repetition cut deeper, hollowing me out from the inside. By morning, the lavender dress still hung untouched. But something inside me had shifted. I could feel it, the first crack in the wall I'd built around myself. The dress lay across my bed like an accusation. Beside it sat the unopened shoebox with the silver heels I'd picked so carefully, imagining how the light would catch them when I watched her walk down the aisle. On the nightstand, a crisp white envelope waited, $100 bills, a mother's blessing for a daughter's new life. All of it untouched. All of it useless now. Out of habit, or maybe self-torture, I opened my phone and scrolled through social media. And there it was. The wedding I wasn't invited to. Lauren, in a lace gown, radiant and glowing. Daniel at her side, his parents smiling proudly. Champagne glasses lifted high. Her new in-laws beaming like they'd won something precious. I studied every detail with the slow ache of pressing on a bruise. The dress, yes, the same one she'd said she needed bill money for. I'd wired her $900, thinking I was helping. In truth, I'd paid for my own exclusion. No hesitation on her face. No flicker of regret that I wasn't there. Just pure joy, and the pride of strangers who now called themselves her family. My chest tightened as I whispered to no one, I was never meant to be part of that picture. And then another memory surfaced, Lauren at 17, curled beside me during one of our late-night talks. "When I get married, you'll be my first call, Mom." I had held on to those words like a promise carved in stone. Now, that broken promise hurt more than any wasted dress or stack of unused cash. I closed my phone, tucked the envelope back into the drawer, and pushed the lavender dress deep into the closet. The door clicked shut, but the humiliation didn't stay behind it. Something sharper stirred under my ribs, scraping against years of guilt and self-blame. It wasn't sorrow anymore. It was anger, quiet, steady, and patient. And soon, it would have its first test. A week went by. The lavender dress stayed hidden, but the weight of it pressed on me just the same. I barely ate, moving through each day like a ghost haunting her own house. Then the phone rang again. Lauren. Her voice, once so sure and cold, now cracked with panic. Mom. The rent's overdue, the landlord's threatening us. You forgot to transfer the money. For a second, habit almost won. I could see myself, same as always, rushing to the bank, canceling appointments, skipping meals so she could have what she wanted. Years of sacrifice had trained me too well. But this time was different. The lavender dress had changed something in me. I sat down, took a slow breath, and said softly but firmly, Lauren, didn't I tell you? I only help special people. Silence. Long, heavy silence. I could almost hear her inhale, stunned. Mom. Don't be cruel, she cried. Cruel. The word hit, but it didn't break me. My hand trembled, not from fear, but from the strength it took to finally hold my ground. I have to go, I said quietly. And before she could start weaving her excuses, I ended the call. I set the phone on the table. The house felt impossibly still. For the first time in years, that silence wasn't suffocating. It was peaceful. My chest ached, but it was a clean ache, the kind that comes when something heavy finally lifts. I walked into the kitchen and brewed a pot of coffee. The rich, warm scent wrapped around me. For decades, every cup I made came with a thought about someone else, their needs, their comfort, their happiness. But that morning, I lifted the mug to my lips and took a long, steady sip. For once, it was just for me. I savored that coffee without a single trace of guilt. Just coffee, bitter, hot, ordinary. And yet, somehow, it tasted like the start of something new. I spread a stack of receipts across the dining table. It looked like a battlefield, ink, numbers, and quiet reminders of every dollar I'd spent trying to keep Lauren and Daniel afloat. Bank statements. Crumpled notes. Old transfer slips. Each one a tiny confession of how far I'd gone to hold on to my daughter's love. My fingers trembled as I reached for the calculator, but they were steady enough to type. $500 a month, for rent, for 36 months straight. $18,000. Groceries, utilities, those endless, little emergencies, that somehow became habits, 11,000 more. Then there were the loans they never paid back, 3,600. I stared at the total. $32,600. The room tilted for a second. My eyes drifted to the photo of Thomas on the sideboard, my late husband, watching me with quiet patience. My throat tightened as I whispered, I spent your legacy buying respect that never even existed. Shame burned hot in my cheeks, but beneath it, there was something cleaner. Sharper. Clarity. The next morning, I walked into the bank. My purse felt heavier than usual, not from money, but from every decision I'd carried inside it. Mrs. Richardson. Mr. Harris, the manager, smiled when he saw me. He'd been the one processing my transfers for years. Cancel them, I said. My voice came out firm, almost foreign to my own ears. Every automatic payment to Lauren and Daniel. He blinked, surprised. Are you sure? You've never missed a single one in 3 years. Yes, I replied, signing the papers. My voice steadier now. I've been blind long enough. When I stepped outside, the air hit cool and crisp against my face. Even the sunlight felt different, sharper, brighter, almost sweet. My shoulders pulled back naturally. For the first time in years, my money, my choices, were mine again. Back home, the quiet felt enormous. My phone, usually buzzing with demands disguised as conversations, stayed still. Not a single text. Not one, I love you, Mom. Not even the polite, empty, how are you? I had gotten so used to those small crumbs of affection that their absence now felt almost pure. Across the street, my neighbor Margaret Hayes waved. She must have seen something in my face because she called out, everything all right? Her voice carried real warmth, the kind I hadn't heard from my own daughter in months. I smiled weakly and nodded, though tears still stung my eyes. Deep down, I knew, this was only the beginning. When I turned onto my street later that day, something felt off. 3 unfamiliar cars were parked in front of my house. My pulse picked up, the air tightening around me. Inside, the chill hit instantly. Lauren and Daniel were already there, and with them stood a man in a gray suit. My dining table was covered in my papers, scattered like the remains of someone who'd already disappeared. My gaze landed on the spare keys dangling from Daniel's hand, the ones I'd given them years ago. Just in case. "Mom," Lauren began, her voice syrupy sweet. "We're just worried about you. This is Mr. Pierce, he's an attorney. He's here to help you sign a few forms, so we can manage your finances for a while. It's only temporary." My stomach turned. Mr. Pierce slid a folder toward me, his smile practiced, professional, rehearsed. Daniel stood back, arms crossed, smirking like he'd already won. I looked down at the papers. Blank signature lines waiting for me to surrender everything. Fear tried to climb up my throat, but something else was stronger. I picked up the folder, walked to the trash can, and dropped it in with a sharp, final snap. "No transition is happening here," I said, my voice cutting through the air. "Except yours, to the front door." Lauren's expression twisted, her voice pitching into false innocence. "Mom, don't be like this. We're just trying to help." Daniel muttered something under his breath. The lawyer cleared his throat and straightened his tie. "Mrs. Richardson," he said, tone rehearsed and condescending, "these are just safeguards, for your peace of mind." I squared my shoulders, though my knees trembled. "My peace of mind will come back the moment you leave." For a long, tight second, no one moved. Then, finally, they gathered their things and shuffled out, muttering threats as they went. I locked the door behind them, pressing my back against it, chest heaving. My body shook from the adrenaline, but beneath the tremor was a strange, fierce calm. I knew then, their love had never been free. It had always come with strings, each one tied to control. And now that they couldn't take my consent, they'd try to take something worse. 3 days later, the next blow landed. I was in the kitchen rinsing coffee cups when the doorbell rang. On the porch stood a woman in a neat blazer, clipboard in hand. "Mrs. Richardson?" she asked politely. "I'm a social investigator with the Department of Senior Services. We've received reports about your mental state. May I come in?" Her words sliced through me. Concerns about my mental state. I didn't need her to say where those reports came from. I already knew. Lauren. Lauren had crossed a line. She'd escalated. I let the woman from the department in, my tone flat and steady, though my pulse thudded in my ears. "Please, have a seat," I said, motioning her toward the couch. Inside, I was shaking. As soon as she settled, I reached for my phone and dialed Mr. Lawson, the lawyer whose business card I'd tucked away after a friend's quiet recommendation. He arrived less than an hour later, calm and composed, his presence like a wall between me and the storm. "Mrs. Richardson," he said gently, "show her what you showed me." Together, we spread my records across the coffee table. Every check signed. Every bill paid on time. Bank statements neatly aligned, labeled, precise, the life of a woman who had spent decades keeping order. My home was spotless. The fridge stocked. Appointments written in my own careful handwriting. The investigator flipped through each page, taking notes, her brow furrowed in concentration. I answered her questions clearly, calmly, my morning routines, my medication schedule, my volunteer work. She nodded, scribbling faster. At last she set down her pen. "I see no cause for intervention," she said. "Case closed." When the door closed behind her, I sank into a chair, trembling so hard I had to grip the table's edge to steady myself. "They want me declared incompetent," I whispered, barely hearing my own voice. Weber met my eyes, his expression grave. "Anna," he said quietly, "this is financial elder abuse. They're not stopping at manipulation. They're trying to take everything." That night, I fell into the first deep sleep I'd had in weeks. In my dreams, Lauren was small again, running barefoot across the yard, chasing bubbles through sunlight. Her laughter rang like music. But when I reached for her, the child vanished. In her place stood the woman with cold eyes, holding documents covered in signatures. I woke with tears streaking down my face. Love, I realized, had been twisted into paperwork, into legal schemes designed to erase me while I was still breathing. And I knew then the fight was only beginning. The next blow came wrapped in an official envelope. A gray morning. The sky heavy with rain. It was a petition, from the county court. Lauren and Daniel had filed for guardianship over me. My own daughter was asking a judge to declare that I couldn't manage my own life. I read the words once. Then again. And again. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Their petition named witnesses, a neighbor who'd never liked me, always complaining about parking and visitors. And worse, my pharmacist, the man I'd trusted for years. Later, I would learn that Nicole, my niece, had convinced him to sign a statement under false pretenses. I called Weber immediately. He listened in silence, then said, calm but resolute, "We'll meet this head-on. I want you to take an independent mental evaluation, not because you need it, but because we'll strip away their ammunition." 2 days later, I sat in Dr. Bennett's office. She was brisk, kind, the sort of woman who spoke with purpose. We went through memory tests, puzzles, word recall, even financial scenarios. Hours passed. But with each question, I felt my confidence returning, like muscle memory. When she finally lowered her clipboard, she smiled. "Mrs. Richardson, you're sharper than most 50-year-olds I see. There's absolutely no doubt about your capacity." Her words should have been a relief. And they were, for a moment. But fear still lingered. Judges were human, and Lauren could cry on command. What if they believed her? What if her tears drowned out my truth? I pictured my accounts frozen, my home no longer mine, my dignity reduced to a case number. The thought hollowed me out. That afternoon, a knock came at the door. Margaret stood there, holding a plate of cookies still warm from the oven. Her eyes softened when she saw my face. I told her everything, the petition, the witnesses, the evaluation. She listened quietly, then reached across the table and took my hand. "Anna," she said firmly, "you're not alone. We'll testify. We've seen you, your clarity, your strength. We won't let them erase you." My throat tightened. I squeezed her hand, tears spilling over. True family, I realized, doesn't always share your blood. Sometimes, it lives right across the street. The hearing date approached, creeping closer with every sleepless night. The courthouse smelled faintly of wood polish and nerves. I sat beside Mr. Lawson, palms slick, heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. When the bailiff called the case, Lauren and Daniel entered together, dressed as if attending a funeral. Lauren in black. Daniel stiff, expressionless. Lauren was called first. She dabbed her eyes delicately with a tissue, her voice trembling in all the right places. "My mother's decline devastates us," she said, lowering her gaze. "She isolates. Spends irrationally. Refuses help. We only want to protect her." Her tears caught the light like crystals, perfectly timed, perfectly placed. When Weber rose for cross-examination, his tone was calm, almost gentle. "When was the last time you called your mother without asking her for money?" The silence that followed stretched so long the judge looked up. Weber continued, "Is it true you told your mother only special people were invited to your wedding?" Color flooded Lauren's face. "Those words were taken out of context," she muttered. Then came Daniel, smug, composed. He painted me as paranoid, unstable, claiming I'd installed locks and cameras like some delusional woman building a fortress. But when the pharmacist testified, his story crumbled. Under Weber's steady questioning, he admitted he'd signed a paper Nicole had brought him without even reading it. The neighbor took the stand next, and his petty gripes about traffic and noise revealed more spite than concern. Then it was my turn. I rose from my chair, legs trembling but spine straight as steel. Each step toward the witness stand felt like walking through water, slow, heavy, but unstoppable. When I spoke, my voice was steady, even if my heart wasn't. I told them about the 3 years of sacrifice, the $32,600 siphoned quietly from my savings account. The wedding I'd been erased from. The day I came home to find a stranger in a suit rifling through my private papers. I regret only that it took me so long to say no, I said, my voice catching but never breaking. A low murmur rippled through the courtroom. I saw heads tilt, whispers pass, papers shift. Judge Anderson leaned forward, hands clasped, his eyes fixed on me, seeing me, really seeing me. When I sat back down beside Mr. Lawson, every breath felt heavy, every second stretched thin. I waited, wondering whose version of love the court would choose to believe, theirs, built on guilt and greed, or mine, scarred but honest. The hours crawled. Each cough, each shuffle of paper set my nerves on edge. By the time Judge Anderson returned, the air itself seemed to hold its breath. He cleared his throat, gaze steady. After reviewing all evidence, he began, "This court finds that Mrs. Anna Richardson is fully competent. What I see here is not incapacity, but a clear attempt at financial exploitation. The petition for guardianship is denied." The words hit me like sunlight after a long storm. Relief flooded my chest so fast I nearly sobbed. Across the aisle, Lauren's face twisted into something unrecognizable, all pretense gone. Daniel muttered a curse, his jaw tight. Their lawyer looked down, already shrinking into defeat. As they passed me, Lauren leaned close, her whisper sharp enough to draw blood. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You'll die alone." I inhaled deeply, forcing calm into my lungs. "Better alone with dignity," I murmured, than surrounded by thieves. Mr. Lawson rested a reassuring hand on my arm, guiding me out of the courtroom. On the courthouse steps, sunlight caught his glasses as he said softly, "Anna, it's time to think about your legacy. Update your will. Protect what's yours, once and for all." That afternoon, I sat at my desk with pen in hand, and for the first time, it didn't feel like a burden, but a weapon. I rewrote everything. No lump sums. No open doors for manipulation. Instead, I created a trust for charities that protect the elderly, and I filled it with clauses so tight, not even the greediest hands could pry them open. This time, the ink on the page didn't feel like surrender. It felt like control. That evening, Margaret and a few neighbors came by carrying casseroles and bottles of wine. Their laughter filled the house, chasing out months of silence. "To freedom," Margaret said, raising her glass. "To courage," I answered, voice trembling with emotion. Tears slid down my cheeks, not from grief, but from the strange joy of finally feeling free. And for the first time in years, I smiled without fear of what the next morning might bring. Months passed, and I stopped counting time in court dates or transfers. Instead, I counted mornings, sunlight streaming through the windows of my new apartment downtown. I had sold the old house, the one haunted by intrusion and memory, and moved somewhere that smelled of coffee and fresh bread. The air here was alive, laughter from the street below, clinking glasses, the hum of living. I found purpose again. I joined a volunteer group teaching seniors how to protect themselves from financial abuse. We sat in circles, faces lined with stories, and I shared mine, not as a confession, but as a warning and a spark of hope. Some nodded through tears, others clenched their fists. But all of them left knowing something vital: silence was never their only option. For the first time in decades, I traveled. In Savannah, I stood before the Duomo with a sketchbook in hand, tracing the cathedral's lines beneath the Italian sun. In Nashville, I let strangers pull me into a dance, spinning and laughing under the glow of street lamps. My feet stumbled, but I didn't care. I was alive, and life, at last, was mine alone. One evening, back in my apartment, my phone buzzed. A message. Lauren, Mom. We need to talk. I stared at it for a long moment. The words tugged at old wounds, but I wasn't the same woman anymore. I typed back slowly, deliberately. Begin with an apology, not an amount. Then I silenced the phone before she could reply. Outside, the stars scattered across the sky like diamonds. I stepped onto the balcony, the night air wrapping around me, cool and clean. I thought love had a price, I whispered to the memory of Thomas. But now I know, real love never sends an invoice. For a long moment, I just stood there, breathing in the quiet. I wasn't an ATM with feelings anymore. I was a woman with freedom, with peace, and with a future entirely my own.